Been a while since we've done a special.
I like the packaging.
Oh, it's the same as every other.
What it is it's a box with discs in it and a lovely box. I like the box.
Oh, I'm going to have to get that line in now.
Oh, you mean that wasn't your only contribution anyway?
No, I mean, I have got other things to say about this.
What is this? Is a box and there's a picture of Colin Baker on the front. What do you want to know about it? Hello and welcome to a Talking About special. Like us, subscribe to us, comment along. I am Paul Bieber and I am joined by... I'm not on my own.
Hello, it's Jason.
Hello, it's James.
I swear you said Jones there.
And hello,
Ben's cutting in and out now. Come on, Ben.
And hello, it's Ben.
Yay, Ben.
If Ben gets half through saying that halfway through saying something and cuts out, it's not Jason's fault.
Oh, that's a change for me not to be blamed for something.
Although Doctor Who being cancelled after series 22 was Jason's fault.
Yeah, I can believe it.
So anyway, we are talking about about season 22.
Shiny box set.
And if you got yours out of it, have you unsheathed it?
Got the booklet. Yay. Unsheathed, yes.
Unsheathed. Waiting for the beautiful condensed packaging.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would ever want to change all my boxes for the condensed packaging somewhere along the way. It would just seem a real waste now, wouldn't it?
I think the worst thing is actually that we have now got these and the slimline packaging. We are buying it twice. But
Mm-hmm.
They know, they see us coming, don't they? Get it on VHS, get it on DVD, get it on get it on a memory stick, get it on a tattoo. I don't know. Yeah, do you know, but a controversial point, and if anyone wants to say what they think about these things, I think this is just like, to me, and hate me for it, you can hate me for it, this is just like that season 1 box set where it was like, oh, it's lovely, the first one you get. But when you get 5 in and it's a bit big, they're like, oh, this is clunky, and first 2 boxes are scuffed and they look a bit unclean now.
The season 1 box set that was square, they all, the sort of plastic bits with the DVDs all fell off. just pretty much after a month, they all fell off. It was all the DVDs were in a pile in the middle of it.
But we get that with these as well. Season 17 was a right stinker for the glue dots not holding together. 24 was quite ropey. Someone, and I can't remember what the link is for the website, but someone just put online, that's all you can get, like plastic cases to put them in, which are quite sexy. But I don't know. Packaging worries. That's what we've got. Packaging worries. Who cares about the content?
It's like that TARDIS box set all over again, isn't it?
Oh.
That's what we just said.
We've just been talking about that.
I know, that's why I'm agreeing with you. I'm actually agreeing with you.
We lost Jason, was it 3 minutes into the discussion?
Is that a record? Delay in Cardiff.
I think it's the longest he's stuck with us.
Oh.
So, who wants to kick off? Who wants to kick off? I mean, there are 3 of you. That's 3 times
I will go, only because I really just want to get rid of this outfit. I'm just going to say the line, you know, don't you? Yay! There we go. Oh, God, that was warm.
Is that what that was all about?
That was all about. No. when we did season 22, you were like, you didn't dress up as the old crone Rani. And I was just like, no, I didn't. So I thought I'd correct that today.
I was hoping for a leotard and some shorts.
That was yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, yeah, it was. Yeah, so season 22 box set. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it? I mean, it feels like sort of almost like the hiatus between the seasons. It was just like, when's it going to arrive? Certainly, I'm sure we're going to talk about some of the featurettes as we go through. I mean, there's quite a bit of content. I don't think as much new content as some of the previous box sets have had. I said before, normally when the box set comes out, I just watch all the extras first before going back to the shows. There's obviously, you've got the staple of Behind the Sofa, interesting combination, and I'm not quite sure that for this season, it's definitely not been my favourite sort of season of Behind the Sofas. Some new interviews, which I'm sure we will come to, and quite a bit of archive stuff as well. So yeah, all in all, a bit of a mixed bag, really, for me. And then you've got the new effects. So I've now had to watch Timelapse twice this year. Yeah, now it's all glittery and sparkly. Still the same story, sadly, but it now has a new effect in it. But yeah, it was interesting.
I was going to say, you're a brave man. You are one brave man there, because I must admit, I have flicked onto Timelapse just to see those effects, and that's pretty much as I'm watching again for a while.
Yeah, I sat through it. I didn't even do what you do, which is like either skip it or watch it like double speed. I actually sat through it again.
Well, I'm with you a little bit on this one. I think that it's lovely to have a new box set added to the collection. You're right, it's been a while actually. And another lovely piece of cover art, I have to say, on the front cover. As always, kudos to Lee, because he's doing some great work there. But it's a little new feature light, and there's lots of lovely archive stuff and lots of lovely studio stuff. But you sort of need a year to get through some of that studio recordings, because they're really quite long, aren't they? But yeah, on the whole, another nice addition to the set, I think, for now.
Who's a buzzing and a beeping, or is that just me that can hear that?
Well, I hear the buzz, but it's not me.
It's chilling. Anyone at home who thinks it's their television breaking down, it's one of these. It's like an Agatha Christie. Blame it on Jason.
It's never always me.
If anything's going to be buzzing suspiciously, it'll be Jason's end.
Say no more.
So I think the first big documentary we come to, I could be wrong, because I'm thinking of, I did it in order. I mean, people might be hedonistic and just go straight to Mark of the Rani and then, work your way through the book. It's the locations, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm going to say, yeah, it was either that or the Colin interview. I think it was the locations. And the Colin one's on the Stephanie.
Jason interjected the camera to go to sleep.
No, I actually was going to say it's the Colin interview that comes first. On the Attack of the Cybermen disc is where I would have gone for my first disc, because I am a little bit, probably a little bit sad. I do all of these discs in absolute order as I go.
Which is just what we just said. Anyway, yeah, the Colin interview is great. I think Colin's having he's actually quite relaxed, isn't he? He's relaxed and he's in a good mood. And I think it works well because there's a lot of discussion in it that's not Doctor Who centric. And that's interesting because actually the one thing I find slightly great on a cover is that everything sort of swings back to Doctor Who when it feels like you've got to shoehorn it into the Doctor Who thing. I mean, I do think there are a couple of points in the Colin one where it did feel very much like, and remember we're doing Doctor Who, and as if you're slightly scared you'll lose the audience if you don't keep it on tap. But for me, the interesting parts were Colin talking about his childhood and talking about things which are less. I enjoyed the hot location and Two Doctors. I like working with Pat, or Kate O'Mara did The Brothers and We Were Lovely Friends. You know, the sort of, the standards is a cruel way of sort of putting it, I suppose. But, you know, it felt that the personal stuff was a lot more interesting and a lot fresher.
It was, and he talked about his family, didn't he, quite a bit, his upbringing. And I found, you're right, he was very relaxed. He seemed to open up quite happily. You know, there were some quite long gaps before the next question, because he was just sort of retelling, you know, some of his experiences and his life story. So I actually, of the 3 main new interviews, the Colin one was my favourite of the 3, by quite some miles, because I just felt it was very natural. Yes, there was a few points where it was redirected back, but actually I thought he was given the space to talk about what he wanted to, and it was very open and very frank.
It was, and I think I've not heard an awful lot of the story around some of the personal stuff that Colin talked about, and actually, you know, to think that he was going into a new role, and obviously he had such tragedy in his personal life at that time, I think it's testament to Colin's character, that, you know, he was able to, you know, go on into the series. But I thought the interview was conducted so well, and it was done so, I think, with a real gentleness from Matthew Sweet in this instance, and I would agree with you. I think it is absolutely the pick of the bunch off this new box set.
Recorded after he saw an interview at Utopia last year, though. Do you remember Matthew and Paul came and watched the panel? They watched Colin Baker interview, didn't they?
They did, actually. Yes, that's right. Yeah, now I remember that.
Hey, tickets they won't be available, but they probably will happen by the time this comes out. You know, it's worth a plug. Get in for next year. Yeah, I think the Michael Grade, sticking on, I think the Matthew Sweet interview is probably the Michael Grade, I think, was possibly the least satisfying thing, because it just sort of gurgled, and it didn't go, because he wasn't very hot on his facts, was he? He was sort of full of himself and kind of doing the sort of I'm Cyril sneer and I killed Doctor Who, and it's just like, you didn't, did you? And he sort of, and he didn't seem to have the facts to back it up, or he just kept going back round on points. He's like, yeah, but you know, you had to sign off on output, and you were saying it's too violent, but you've been watching, yeah, and he felt like he just wanted to sit there and go, hey, yeah, I killed Doctor Who, it wasn't funny, but once he'd done that joke that had really got a lot of basis, he wasn't willing to give anything else.
No, he wasn't, and Matthew was having to work quite hard and take the interview back round, because I think he was trying to get to the nub of what really happened. And Michael Grade was giving nothing away. And his answers actually were so short and so clipped. And you could see he just turned up for the day. It was almost felt like it was a curio for him to turn up, do the interview, not really give us anything new, I didn't think, over and above. And I don't think be terribly genuine about actually what was going on back there at the time as well.
I mean, I'm hopeful that because we've obviously had Colin, Nicola, Michael Grade for this. I'm hopeful that we'll get Eric for season 21 or 20. I don't know, because it feels like the 3 people who can tell that story of the cancellation and all that sort of how that rolled. Colin, Nicola, and Eric are probably your only sort of 3 in that. Yeah, you know, Sarah Lee or whoever, you actually at the heart of it, actually as named people, I think those are your set 3. Because Michael, for all the sort of the build on it, it was a sort of 5-minute featurette that, because he wasn't going to, if it had been a career talk with Michael, and how did Doctor Who fit in with it, but it was very much, Doctor Who was cancelled, why did you do it? And he's like, ha ha ha, I didn't like sci-fi, ha ha ha, it was crap, it was cheap, ha ha ha. And it's just like, it's not true. I mean, I don't know whether any of you follow Pip Madeley on Twitter. He did a great thread about Michael Grade not having commissioned a lower low, and that being another sort of pie in the sky kind of story. And it just felt like that this was what that interview was. It was a bit of a shame because I say from the trailer and stuff, I suppose you felt there was going to be a bit more meat on the bone. And I would have had a bit more respect because he must have known a bit more about why he did. Unless it simply was that he just didn't like Doctor Who, just full stop, just didn't like it. But it just seemed a bit odd that there was no more, I wanted to make this drama, or I wanted to make, because he's like, oh, I was responsible for saving money. It didn't matter that it made more money around the world because that's not how you should run a public service broadcast. It was like, well, hang on, you're saying you cancelled it because you needed the money, but then you're saying you shouldn't make something that makes, it was all a bit kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I found it went round and round in circles, and Matthew Sweet kept on sort of saying, so you cancelled it, but it carried on anyway. And he was just like, well, it was all paid for. It was already in production. You know, what was I supposed to do? And he's like, well, you didn't cancel it then, did you? And it just felt like that Matthew wanted an answer to something that Michael didn't have an answer for, and I found it excruciating in the end. I was just like, stop saying, so you cancelled it, why did you get, because it was, I was getting more and more agitated, and Michael Grave was just like sat there going, what, I'm going to give you another answer, but I'm not quite sure what it is that you want to get to. And you know, like you say, quite a lot of what he says is, Ben, you were telling me about the Pip Madeley thing on Twitter, because quite a lot of what he said has been disputed.
I mean, the fact that he says that he was saving money by ditching it is also not true, because they still had to pay Colin and Nicola not to do the series and keep them on, and pay the director of the first two, and the scripts all had to be, but actually it cost more not to do it than it would just to roll with it. So even that doesn't hold true as a, you know, I cancelled it to save the money. You could have cancelled it, said, right, this is your last season, then you're cancelled. That would have made more sense, because you'd have been stopping the production rather than just sort of leaning and going, yeah, no more, we don't want it. So yeah, a mixed bag of interviews there, I think. Nicola one, I think, lasts about an hour. So the other documentary on Attack of the Cybermen is the location one, isn't it? Are we coming back to that one? Because I started the location chat and went. What? I feel like I've walked into a. You have seen this. You know what I'm talking about. I'm having an episode, am I?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. It's quite sweet. It's interesting. I always like the sort of now and then sort of things on you know, locations. I mean, some places are more glamorous and exciting than others, aren't they? And you know, but it's still quite sweet to sort of go, oh, okay, yeah, I can still see that's your alleyway and all that sort of stuff. It's quite cool.
It was good to see how much of London hadn't, well, a lot of it had changed. Obviously, the junkyard wasn't there because they built flats on it now. But I do like those sort of now and thens. And I think it's been presented by Chris in such a way that it's done as a really nice wander down memory lane for Colin and Nicola. I particularly found the stuff up on the farm for the revelation of the Daleks. Exterior work really interesting, particularly that there was a rare photograph that I'd not seen before of a Dalek that was meant to be blown up on location that wasn't used in the end because of the weather.
Yeah, all these little bits and stuff, isn't it? Sarah Helling seems like she might have been quite scary as a director. She had a retired schoolmistress vibe. I was a little bit scared. I'm sure she's lovely. But she did have a retired school teacher sort of vibe, and I was like,
again, I mean, that was beautiful location work there as well on site of the Iron Bridge, and it's kind of like, you know, to go back again, it really hasn't changed at all. I know we probably talked about this when we did the season 22 review of the story, but the beautiful camera work, I think that Chris has used there. He's taken the, you know, he's taken the drone out and he's giving us some really, really nice sort of aerial views of the site there. It's really nice to just see it again and just revisit it, particularly in high def.
I don't know why Colin got his bag on though. I don't know why someone didn't hold that for him whilst they were filming. It seemed a bit like he was like, you know, he got to go somewhere afterwards and he got his bag ready. I don't know. It made me laugh a little bit. I was like, someone take his bag, especially when it came to putting the cloak on. So he had to put the cloak on over his bag as well. Yeah,
and there was certainly not much. I was going to say there's certainly not much room for him and Nicola under that cloak anymore.
Oh, was that Shady Clifford?
No, it wasn't. That was just, you know, it's a joke.
Clifford, Doctor Who hater. That's what we want.
I'm really not. I'm really not.
So yeah, that's a sweet thing. Moving forward, I have to confess that I think Vengeance on Varos is bloody terrible. As I think we discerned in our review. The extended version is more of it, and it's more of the bickering and the. I mean, it probably takes Doctor Who and Perry about an hour to turn up. It's like it's terrible. It's even more just standing in the half-lit console room, just arguing.
That's a sitcom all on its own. Just a spin-off.
Could you imagine if, in the interest of keeping the show going, they'd just taken the Colin and Nicola TARDIS scenes and put canned laughter over them? Unstable. It'd be great. Vengeance on Varos, you've been watching Colin Baker. Someone needs to re-edit that. Someone needs to do that.
I'm surprised JNT didn't do that himself.
I don't think there's much else on the Vengeance side, is there? I don't think there's much. I don't think there's much. I'm consulting the box.
I've not got the box in front of me, but there wasn't.
This was one of the ones I think that was definitely a bit thin on new extras on this particular disc.
Colin Baker years.
Yeah.
Is on there.
I did watch all of that actually, even though I had it on VHS.
I love that VHS.
I sort of struggled to get through it this time. I think it really dragged, I think.
It's commented to hate on the VHS transfer. Isn't it that you get the what's it mode, don't you, where the author of this story has chosen not to give us a clip?
Oh, yes.
It's all right. They're best friends now.
So here's a shot of, was it Blackpool with the plane going over for children in need? It was like, oh, that's totally random.
But isn't it weird in these things, though, when you sort of watch them? Because like Colin Baker was done 94. So it's only 8 years after he stopped being Doctor Who. I mean, it's like, that's not a long time. I mean, 8 years in Doctor Who terms, like now, you think that how far that takes us back. It's interesting when you watch some of these things there, you think, crikey, that was 8 years after he'd finished, and now that's nearly 30 years old itself. Like, we're all getting old, I think, is the moral of that.
Speak for yourself. Getting younger.
Well, it's only because you were dressed like a crone at the start. I mean,
exactly. I've de-aged already.
I think that's cheating. I don't think that's actual youth.
You should have at least kept it on till the Mark of the Rani.
I couldn't say it's too hot. There would be nothing left of me by that point.
Again, Mark of the Rani, there isn't really an awful lot new on that, is there? I don't believe.
Is that the one where they got the villainesses and there's some like featurettes?
But they've come over from the DVDs, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think with some of these releases, if they're released sort of towards the end of the range, they would then have a lot more stuff on them. So then it makes it more difficult to bump them up now. Whereas something like Two Doctors was the very first Colin disc out in the range, I think, and so obviously it didn't have a making of. It didn't have a lot of other stuff on it. So I think that's why it's probably easy with some of them to, like Varos obviously was released twice, wasn't it? original one and then the special edition. So that's probably why there's not a lot more they can sort of squeeze out of it. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I'm not poo-pooing, but I think it's that interesting thing that the sort of point to an extent is, I suppose, that you want people to buy these for new things. And again, I'm not, you know, I just, there's a couple of discs where I think it is very heavy on previous stuff. And again, I suppose there is only so much you can do or say or whatever. What's it? Because I think it's James Gosling, isn't the Villainesses one? There are a couple of treats in that where obviously TV's Camille Cajori has not watched Silver Nemesis ever before, so she's slightly sort of told, you know, this is what you got to say, and she gamely says it all back. Kate's a treat on that, and I like her end thing of, I think we need a gang up with all of them, and I'll kick all their asses. Yeah, I think
Tracy Ann's on that as well, isn't she? Tracy Ann Engelman's on that, talking about, who was she talking about?
She looks like some random, like Carla from the Keys of Marinus or something.
There was
really random.
Like, do you know who that person is? Because it started off with like the big names, and then they were getting down to random characters in the story, and you're like,
Juno Baker, terrifying Juno Baker. She's chilling. Yeah, it's I suppose for people who like a camp aesthetic, it's a nice watch. So Two Doctors is where you get a lot of new stuff. The new making of. My favourite thing about the making of, because basically I'm a little bit superficial, is the lovely Carmen Gomez has got a copy of her book on the table next to her. I love that. I love a product placement. I mean, I'm sorry that someone has put a lot of effort into shooting and making that, and you know, an hour and a half and all that stuff. And for me to pull out my favourite thing being her product placement, I apologise in advance.
I loved her book.
I loved her marketing. I've got a copy of the book, Boys and Girls, signed by the author, gifted to me, friends. So yeah, that's a good documentary, and it is nice to especially. I mean, with the march of time, it's always difficult, but there are enough people that can talk about it that it works well. Actually, the documentary.
Yeah, plenty of new information in there. The only thing I found slightly jarring about it, again, it's just about the way it's presented. I found some of the bits at the beginning, particularly when they were introducing each of the contributors, and they had that sort of really flickery screen thing, and it might have looked quite good in practice, but in delivery, I don't think that was very confusing.
After a while, it got really annoying after a while, and it's like, just, you know, all right, you showed you can do all this fancy back and forth, just right now, concentrate on the interviews and, you know, stop. Yeah, I agree completely.
But plenty of good stuff in there, and I particularly enjoyed some of the stories behind how the Sontarans were hired.
Yeah, no, it was good, and it's good to finally get, as you say, like a making of, even though when you think about Two Doctors with a cast, I think there's only about 3 people left from it now, because we've lost quite a lot of it, of the guest cast, of course, obviously not counting the regulars, but and it's actually is the same for a lot of the other stories, a lot of the other ones. You know, you sort of think you think of this as more sort of recent Who, do you know what I mean, in sort of classic terms, and yet you think, oh god, you know, they've gone, all that sort of thing. So
you harbouring the advent of death now.
No, I'm just pointing out that they did actually manage to get enough decent people, considering that we've lost a lot of the cast from it, because
including some of the dead ones who were interviewed earlier. Magic of television.
Well, it's lucky, because of course if they never did anything at the time, then we would have never got to hear from some of that lot, would we? So yeah, so it's nice that they can then talk about them and involve them as well. So yeah.
I did also chuckle at the fact that JNT was asking for £150,000 to take the entire cast and crew across to New Orleans for 10 days to do the filming for this story. I mean, that's a flight of fantasy right there, isn't it?
Given the problems they had just going to Seville with the wigs and the costumes, ending on somewhere else. I mean, that would have just been horrendous.
I don't always like Uncle Eric and his disapproving. You know, John wanted a holiday. It's kind of like, yeah, okay.
He says it like it is, doesn't he?
Yeah. I mean, the other documentary is, again, it's kind of amazing for all the wrong reasons. Nicola Bryant's home video going around Seville. It's something, if you watched it with a drink, it would probably be like a night in. It'd probably be a game. Because
do you know what? I watched it today because I forgot there was 2 discs. So I watched it this afternoon, and I just sat there going, "Oh, okay, this, you know, going back to some of these locations, this is quite." And essentially, it's just Nicola Bryant slightly intoxicated on a coach going, "There's a cactus I recognise." Just like...
I love the fact that, and I mean, it wasn't shot in prehistory. I mean, it's not that old. It's sort of like 2005 or something. But they don't know where any of the locations are. So it's all right. It was on a road near to Seville, and when I see it, I'll know it. We'll just drive around a bit until I see something, and I'll recognise it. It'll be fine.
So do you think this is the edited highlights? Like the coach was driving for 4 or 5 hours round and round until they go, "Oh, where the hell is this place?"
It was a coach death trip. They started with a party of 20, and one by one they went, just looking for the Gumball Jack scene.
And several of them ended up in the river because
it was almost turning into Blair Witch Project at that point, wasn't it?
they also kamikaze film on the hacienda, don't they? They just go to someone's private house and run around a bit. And Nicola's had a drink and she's pretending to be Shastini, isn't she, drinking the blood? It's like...
Oh, no.
It was just bizarre. There's a guy on the phone, like, ringing around the area trying to find out who owns this house and where this house is. And I was just thinking, back in my head, I was going, surely they just contact someone at the BBC who knew where they filmed it. There's got to be some archive that says this is the place that we went to. But
surely there was a Doctor Who magazine archive feature by that point. You could have just read in the magazine where they filmed.
It's probably the books.
Well, Richard Bignell did a book, didn't he, on locations? Just look there.
Yeah.
And I dread to think how much this actually cost each of the people on the trip to actually go on this trip.
They were loyal supporters. I thank you for supporting this.
Here's the bill.
Well, what did you do yesterday? We walked around Seville. We had some lovely dinner and some wine. So this is the highlight. Think what ended up on the cutting room floor.
And Nicola keeps saying we've had some lovely, lovely wine. Every scene, she's had good wine every time.
She even said at one point, she said, I'm pissed. She said, I'm pissed. And then bizarrely, they had that posh woman voiceover who was just like, and this was built in 19th century, blah, blah, blah. I was like, is this supposed to be like a tourist video, or is this a Doctor Who video? So my brain was going, what is she talking about now? And she's like, and this mansion is now owned by blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh my god.
I mean, if we don't get on the season 6 box set, Fraser and Wendy pissed on Brighton Rubbish Tip, I want my money back. I think it's the benchmark for how you've got to do these things. I want to see them tripping in the old bean tins, hiccuping some old wine again. I think that's where the TARDIS landed. I recognise that. I recognise that rock.
Yeah, you can get Brendan from Coach Trip. He can lead the thing and drive. Like, we are going to Brighton Rubbish Tip. They're going, yay!
You have the teams on there. I mean, you could take all the money from the behind the sofa, have them all on the coach, and vote them off.
Oh. Yeah, exactly. and then just
Great.
dump them on the side of the road with their suitcases. So there you go, go find your own way home.
You could keep dumping them on the side like by the Barnet bypass. It could be a
exactly.
So yes, the Two Doctors has got, I mean, I can't believe that the feature we've talked about the most is Nicola Bryant getting drunk with a handy cam. But the time lash that follows has got new effects.
Polishing a turd.
It has got new effects, and they're great, but they just look out of place in some instances, particularly the time lash itself. It looks like it's the Tom Baker time tunnel.
It does, yes. And then inside the time lash, I think they've tried to blur it so much to try and hide all the really crappy, cheap sets that it was, that it just, you just think, I don't actually know what's going on here. It's just Colin Baker in there with just a lot of blur around him, and it's like it just doesn't work. I think the only thing that really works is the like the laser, like the laser guns and stuff. They look quite good because they're a bit crap on the original thing, that little sort of zigzaggy thing that came out. But that's good. But I just think the whole time lash effect, it just doesn't really work.
And did they? And this might just be me, because by this point I was like, oh my god, I'm watching this for the second time. Did they change the picture of Pertwee?
No, I think it was the same one.
Was it the same one?
Yeah, I think it was the
I
same.
thought they'd like done something with it to make it look slightly more, because it's like quite drawing-y, isn't it? And I thought they vamped it up, but
don't think so. I know the guys who did the effects for it were talking about replacing the "Hello, I'm the Banter Ambassador" and the Morlocks as well, because it's just, you know, but I think they said it was too difficult to you know, you'd have to sort of, you know, make a lot of effort and probably a lot more money. So no, I think do that.
The problem is that with this story, changing the effects is fine, but it doesn't alter the actual story. And we've reviewed that story and we weren't particularly nice to it. So it's kind of like, yeah, that's great that you've done that, and I actually quite like the new effect on the, you know, on the thing, but the actual story itself is not changed in any way. So yeah,
it's not adding to the story. It's nice. It's a nice to have, but I tend to just not watch with the new special features. I haven't done whenever there's been special effects added, because I sort of still want that original as broadcast watch of a story, I think.
I mean, it's interesting when you see the new effects on various things. Some of them work really well. I thought the snake from Kinder worked really well. I thought that looked really cool. But some of the other ones don't, like what was it, Planet of the Daleks? It just didn't really work, the whole thing with the ship and stuff. It just looked wrong. So I mean, all right, you know, great that these guys are coming through and doing these effects and trying to make it like, oh, you know, here's another edition that you can see what it would have looked like if they'd had the budget. But sometimes it just looks out of place, and yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't really work.
They could have deep faked Jean Ann Crowley into a better performance, couldn't they?
Oh, God, it's so vague. I mean, she's just off with the fairies the whole time. You know, she's acting in something else while everyone else is doing time lapse. You know,
I mean, you can sort of see why Mr. Darrow's like, leave it to me, folks. Leave it to me.
Can I just say though, in the behind the sofa, they're quite sort of pointed about Mr. Darrow. It's quite, he comes into some quite sort of, I don't know, criticism and sort of ridicule in that. And I just think, well,
I feel his reputation for the acting may have preceded him somewhat on that.
I know that in the because when you watch the sort of behind the scenes and everything, and they talk about the Richard III, and he was just like, I'm going to do it as Richard III, and I'm like, all right then. So you can kind of see why, you know, what he's doing and why he's doing it. But he does come in for a little bit of criticism on the old behind the sofa.
The behind the sofa remains the most perplexing extra in the world to me. I still can't quite understand what it's for. And so if they're watching it cold, then that's a cold reaction. But they're not all watching it cold, because some of them have been prepped with information that they wouldn't otherwise know. Sarah suddenly has some very interesting plot information on different stories that she wouldn't know. Wendy Pablo knows that Attack of the Cybermen is really written by Eric Saywood. There are certain things that you think, I know this isn't this. They wouldn't. It wouldn't be a thing. But then they keep
a bit.
But they keep strange things. So like Janet announces that it's written by a woman, to be cut to Wendy then saying it's written by Eric Saywood. Well, if you know that what Janet's saying isn't right, don't keep it in. It seems a bit strange.
Although it did contain one of my favourite lines of the box set, which is, Nicola Bryant's been groped by a tree, which I just thought was which is brilliant.
Again, I also I come back to the thing I always say at these things, and I've said, the last couple of times, they like to put the established people in their set patterns, but it works better when they're not in a lot of ways. Sylvester and Wendy's a great combination because they're friends outside, so it works because they're friends, but they've got a doctorate connection. But there's just a part of me goes, do you know what? Wouldn't it have been better if Colin had been with Janet and Sarah or something, or if they just mix someone who knows what's going on in the clips they're watching with the people that don't, so that if Janet goes, you've got another costume, as she surprisingly does on this disc, Nicola can say, oh yes, well I had this thing, or I had this, and this is how it was for me, how was it for you? You'd have a dialogue that was reacting to what you're seeing and giving you a little bit more. Whereas it just seems to be confusion, and you get a lot of, that's William Gordon.
Then you get three times, and they all say the same thing. Yeah.
And it's a shame, because I like the idea of it, and I think it could be a lot more satisfying than it is. But again, some people are better at the commentating than others. Peter, literally on Revelation, gets his phone out because he's finished. He's like, I'm off the clock now. He's not joking. He is ready to go.
Yeah, he said it.
He did right at the end.
It's like he's actually got his phone out because he's bored of watching these things. He's just taking the money and going, and that's like, that feels a little bit grim.
He's probably scrolling to see if his next job's come through, or a payment. Have they paid me yet? Oh.
How are you sending payment? I've not had a notification through yet. Exactly. I've done all 5 of them.
I also think that one of the other things that isn't working about this particular feature as well is I know they restricted and they filmed these during COVID restrictions, and they've plonked them on these sort of individual seats that look ghastly uncomfortable. They're having to add lots of extra cushions under there because they're clearly not comfortable to sit on for the length of time. But I actually think the plastic barriers between them are also stopping a flow of dialogue, I think, between them. And I just wondered, if it were me filming that, and I know this might sound critical, but I'd look at perhaps a way of doing it in social distancing ways, but necessarily somehow managing to not have a barrier there between everybody on their individual seats. So I think it's sort of lost some of its, because some of the early behind the sofas were sat on a sofa and they were all there and they were able to interact, and you had Katie and Richard and John, and it all worked really well, but the barriers are a problem, I think.
I agree as well, especially about the seats, because at first I think from about Attack of the Cybermen, McCoy is like down like this, like right into his chair. He's almost like sinking in, and then by the next one, he's like,
it's got
all these cushions up.
Yeah, they give him a double seat essentially by the end, and he's got a booster seat on his chair, and he's sat right up in the air then. And then another one, Davison's legs are like as wide as they can possibly go, and his trousers are slightly a bit too tight in wrong places. So I don't know why they needed to focus on that. They should have cut away, but never mind.
All creatures moose knuckle.
I thought I agreed that Wendy and Sylve worked really well, and they're very sort of they are really good friends, but they think along the same wavelengths, and I know when we reviewed it, we talked quite a bit about some of the violence that was in this season, and they really picked up on that and you know, talked about that, but talked about it in a very sort of grown up way of, you know, is this right? You know, is this a kids program sort of thing? So I liked that dynamic. I unfortunately felt the other, you know, Peter and Janet and Sarah we're just like, oh, it wasn't like that when we did it, or, you know, oh, we never got that kind of costume, or we never got to go to Seville. We just went to Amsterdam in November and it was gold. It just felt a little bit sort of whiny.
Yeah, just a lot of moaning.
Saying, oh, you know, we did this and we did that, and, you know, we spoke about this, and I think you're right, Peebo. If they'd had a bit of a mix, if they'd had Nicola there to say, well, yeah, the reason why my costume changes is because this happened, and she does explain that on one of the documentaries. She said, you know, I had to change this, and the outfit wasn't practical. I had to change my shoes. You would have got a new perspective of it, rather than, oh, you know, why she got a new dress on.
But maybe when they come round to doing the first 6 seasons, because we know obviously then there's going to be problems, not only with content, because, you know, you're not going to get, I mean, you say that, oh, this set's a little bit light on some of these things, but wait till you get to the first 6 seasons, they're going to really struggle then. But I think when they get to the behind the sofas for seasons 1 to 6, that's when you're only going to get, you know, like, say you're Maureen O'Brien or Annika Wills or whatever, and then you can have someone else there, and then you maybe get that dialogue, as you said, Paul, about having someone there from a later season to then compare, oh, how was it for you? And I think hopefully if they do that then it might work a lot better.
Yeah, I think. I know I won't do spoilers, but yeah, I think for Walking there is some of that, but I just think you need to kind of just take. So even say you were doing the first season, you need Carol Ann sat with Sophie or something, rather than saying let's get Carol Ann and William and Warris to watch all of the stories. You just need someone who can say, oh, well, when it came to me, oh God, yeah, the same thing was true for me, and how was it when you did? And it would just help it. Because, I mean, again, that's the other problem I sort of have, especially sort of with the Revelation disc, and I'm not going to be a hate here. When we did the Who Talk commentary video, Colin hadn't done the commentary before, so it was the first time he done. It was the only one he hadn't done for the DVD range. So I sort of expected when it came to doing the Blu-ray that they would do that. Okay, so there's no shame in that. But he does the commentary, and they get Nicola and Terry back to do the commentary with Alexis Elsa. Nicola and Terry come back to the commentary with it. Nicola and Terry are on the original commentary, which is also on the disc. Colin, Nicola, and Terry are all on the making of, and they're on the behind the sofa. So in the nicest possible way, and without being a horrible person here, you're now getting the same iterations or versions of the stories when you could have done something about. And okay, so our commentary, for example, we ended up having Colin, Bridget Lynch-Bloss, Trevor Cooper, Colin Spall, and then Graham Harper and William Gaughan. So there are a lot of people, there are a heck of a lot of people you could get. Revelation is one of those, unlike, say, Attack of the Cybermen, Revelation is brimming with people you can ask to do it, both in front and behind, you know, design and all sorts of stuff. It seems a little bit strange to be on this kind of mental thing of it's got to be Doctor, Companion, Doctor, Companion, Doctor, Companion, because it's like, it's lovely, and I get that there's a huge fan base of people that just like Doctors and Companions, and that's their lodestone. It's marvelous. But if you just do Doctors and Companions, you don't get your Margot Hayhos, who've got a heck of a lot to say and have got a lot of insight and lots of really great content to tell you. And a commentary track, which is a very specific thing, because a lot of people don't even bother with them, I don't think, is something where you want to hear a bit more about the story. And I think you've got to come at it with a bit more invention and say, actually, as a massive guest cast, we'll have this lot for part 1, this lot for part 2. We'll have these technical people and these technical people. Fine, get Colin to plug the gap there, but this kind of Colin, Nicola, Terry, and that's no disrespect to any of them because I think they're all lovely. It just seems a strange lock on. That's my rant.
Yeah, very true, very true. It's the same with the what they did with the DVDs. I remember in the early days where you would have a lot of the commentaries with just Doctor Companion, and just go through all that. Whereas when they got to the later ones, obviously, you know, something like with Reign of Terror, where you couldn't necessarily have a lot of the regulars on it, but it was good because they mix and matched on each of the episodes, and they would have like one guest star from each of those different episodes on it, and it was a great variety, and that's what you want, because you don't want people, you know, the same sort of people over and over, you know, on those other ones, because it just gets repetitive, and especially when you have that on the commentary, and then you have the making of, and you do get you watch a lot of these old making ofs from, you know, 10, 15 years ago, and then you're listening to commentaries and people saying the same stories over and over again, and so you know it needs to be mixed and matched up, otherwise it's just going to get stale.
They always say, I've not seen this since it was broadcast.
Oh, I know. It's bollocks. It really is. It's like, do they have short memories? I don't know.
Like,
this is what Jason
You've got
said.
2 commentaries watching it on this bloody Blu-ray. You have seen it.
Oh, I haven't seen this since it went out. Really?
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, because Colin, Nicola, and Graham all go to the location for Revelation as well. So it's like it is just a sort of. I just like, and it's got nothing to do with me. And everyone loves these things, and I'm, you know, marvelous. I just feel that there are probably a few voices that could have come into this and could have been better used, and it would have been nice to have John Ogwen's not, you know, there's so many people for Revelation. I don't think Eleanor Brom would have touched it with the long stick. I can't see it myself. I do like her little breakfast time snippet where she's just, I think she'd scare me, but I do adore her. She's Patsy's mum, isn't she? But
take it away.
I think she, because I know when we did our Who Talk commentary, Graham was like, he was talking about how scary Eleanor was, and William Gaunt was like, yeah, she still is. I just did a play with her, so I kind of love the fact that she's just like terrifying, but you know, obviously lovely with her.
While we're on Revelation, what did you think of the new effects for Revelation?
They weren't too bad. I mean, they did the job, really, just improving the Dalek exterminations and it was that sort of thing. So
because I was sort of halfway through the first episode and I was like, I'm not quite sure I've seen any new effects yet. It's only when the Dalek got firing.
There's I know there's not a lot of particular replacements in it. It's just a little tweak here and there, really, very subtle. There's
the bit where the Dalek exterminates what's her name?
Natasha and Grigory.
Yeah, that was different.
Yeah,
but it great Dalek.
Yeah, but because it didn't work. The original thing, the original first time, it never worked because the aspect sort of ratio was it just didn't work. It was just really weird. So I think they tried to fix that as best they could. But
yeah, so there was that. There was Davros's
his eye,
was better,
and the hovering of the chair, and
the chair was a bit and then they did. You could see where they were shot as well. They'd lit up people's body parts, like when he got shot in the arm. You could see that the extermination had sort of glanced him. So there was slightly better, but I felt that some of the outside shots they'd not managed to clean them up. They still looked. It was very
dirty. Was it a dirty Revelation?
Well, no, I just don't think it. Some of them have been really sort of nicely packaged up for HD, whereas the outside shots didn't seem as crisp as some of the other bits, which is a bit I don't know whether that's because of the way that it was filmed, whether it's not possible to do that. It just seemed a bit of a shame when you had then the new effects later on in the story.
Yeah,
The
well,
story doesn't need-
unfortunately, sorry, Jace. Unfortunately for the for season 22, compared to a lot of the previous seasons, virtually nothing exists in the film stuff. So unfortunately, a lot of the stuff does still look a bit grubby, and they can't really fix it up. I know that the Two Doctors film sequences were bought by someone on eBay, and then they tried to contact them, and then they just didn't reply. So it's like, so someone's got them somewhere, and then they wouldn't give them up. But otherwise, you know, it's a shame really that a lot of this stuff just wasn't kept, because otherwise it probably would have looked really good, like, you know, we had for season 18, 19. A lot of the film stuff was still existing for that. So yeah,
and it's surprising it wasn't kept as well. For me, I think it's nice to have, and I'm sure some people do like them. As I've already said, I prefer watching the episode in the original form. This story doesn't need any extra new flashy effects. It's good. It stands on it. It's a 10 out of 10 story. This is one of the best of the season. It doesn't need any extra enhancement.
Two Doctors, didn't they keep pretty much everything till about like 1994 or 95? It was quite really late. It's one of those things we think, crikey, it was still there that late on, and then someone, yeah, chuck it out, get it on eBay.
Yeah.
The weirdest missing thing for me on this set, knowing that you can author Blu-rays can divert, can't they? You don't have to put the same thing. You can divert chapters rather than. Why did they not put the overseas terrible 4-part option? Why can you not watch it with the?
Yeah, I was wondering that, because obviously when I was growing up in Australia, so I saw them as 4-part version, and for Two Doctors 6-part version. And so although if you ever watched it with the info text, it would usually just tell you, oh, this bit here is where the original bit ended. But I don't know why, even if they didn't want to do like a seamless branching or something like that, they could have at least just as extras put it on one of the discs, say, oh, here's the end of this original one, here's the end of this three, blah 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 blah, that sort of thing, just for curiosity really, because some of them are awful. I think one of the worst one was probably in Two Doctors. The end of the original part 3 was where the doctor goes to Anita. He says, can you lead us to this hacienda? And she says, of course, it's this way. And then they end it, and you think, wow, I want to tune in next week to see what happens.
Does part 4 start with Nicola Bryant in a coach going, I think it's over here.
How long have we been walking around trying to find the hacienda? Oh, there's more wine. Yeah, because the Vengeance from Barra's got a couple of, because I watched it on Forces TV recently. I think episode 3 is like, can you walk? Come on then.
Yeah,
it's just like end credits.
I know. There's some of them are really naff, and you think, why did they decide to end it there? So, but yeah, I don't know why they didn't just include it, as it's not like it would have taken up much room.
Because you get on Revelation, because it's part of the continuities, because you get the BBC Two, you know, intros, outros, and all that. So it's even more. But I just think you've got the option. You could have altered it just to let us have the fun of watching them in their truncated glory.
Indeed.
I want my money back, and I'm cancelling my license fee. I'm not even joking. Have we almost go? The big thing that I think, we won't spoiler it, because if you haven't watched it yet, it's an interesting thing. But they have had a little tinker with Interfix with Sontarans, which I think you'll either approve, or you'll think it's a lot of effort for nothing. I thought it was quite nicely done, actually, and it's.
I did.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was. It's nice that we can have it on the disc rather than not have it on the disc.
Yeah, there was basically that was the only way really to get around it, wasn't it? Rather than having, because a lot of people were thinking, oh, is it just going to be removed completely? But as it's luckily only the end, really, that's all they needed to sort of switch.
I know there is a chap, and I'm not going to remember his name because I don't really remember anyone's name. I don't know my own. Who asked about the picture and the sound quality, and I thought, well, we should address that because actually, as a Blu-ray, that's the point of these things. But I'm rubbish on things because when people talk about loss of the sound and MP3 compression and stuff, I'm kind of like, it sounds all right. So I mean, the Blu-ray player that we have upscales DVDs anyway. So I didn't watch, and I know people take a lot of time cleaning these things up and doing this, and I don't take anything away from that. But I didn't watch any of the episodes and think, crikey, this looks so much better than it did ever before.
Picture-wise, that's why I mentioned about Revelation, because it isn't. There isn't a stark difference, like you say, Ben, when you watch some of the earlier ones, because they had the film, you can really see the difference. It's quite crisp and it looks like new, whereas this, it especially with, I really spotted it with Revelation, with the outside scenes when it was, the lighting wasn't brilliant and it'd been snowing. The picture quality isn't great. The sound, I didn't really sort of tell much difference. That I quite like some of the soundtracks to some of these stories, Revelation being one of them. So I didn't really notice a great deal of difference in the sound, but there could well have been. But to me, it just sounded like it did when I first watched it.
There's a surround sound version of Attack of the Cybermen, if anyone's tried that. I don't have a surround sound system, so
for me, the 5.1 mixes are coming through nicely. Again, they add a little bit extra. It's nice to have the cleaned up audio, and I'm getting sounds in different speakers, which is working well, exactly as a 5.1 mix should work.
Good, very nice. But I think the main thing that, because a lot of people say, oh, is there really much difference? And they say, oh, I can't see much difference between my DVD and the Blu-ray. I think the main thing, especially for the earlier releases, when they were released, you had a lot of picture noise, and you had a lot of, I can't remember the technical term, it's like blocking or something like that, where sometimes you see like sort of squares appear around the picture, and that's all gone now. And that was always really annoying. And if you put on some of the earlier DVD release ones, and it just, because they were really compressed, and so they looked really sort of noisy in the picture, and it just didn't look quite good. So at least that sort of thing now is gone. But as they said, you can't fix them, you can't make them absolutely amazing, because basically they don't really have the original elements anymore, apart from certain film sequences. Then you're just going to have to. And plus, anyway, I think, when was it, from Warriors of the Deep onwards, I think they used, is it 2-inch videotape or something like that?
They go to 1-inch rather than
1-inch. Or something like, whatever it was of a lesser quality. So everything from that onwards is always going to look lesser quality, and unfortunately, that covers the whole of season 22. So yeah. So I think maybe other seasons are going to look better if they were in the, the original videotapes are still preserved.
I also sometimes think if your film sequences are really sharp and the studio isn't, you have that kind of jar then between, like to extent, I think Black Orchid was a bit of a location and then back to studio, which you never got. And it's funny when you watch some of the features on these where they go into other bits, you see how dirty some of the film sequences actually were broadcast. That's how they went out. It's not like they've got dirty since. They went out scratched and a bit funny looking. It's a double-edged sword, because obviously that's what you're buying an HD Blu-ray for. It's a little bit like the Avengers sets, that they're all, but they're beautiful because they're shot on film. But they're not necessarily, they might be shot on film, which you can HD, but the production standard isn't an HD production standard, and it's going to show things up that weren't.
Yeah, because some of the, which one was it where you can see all the scuffs around the bottom of the TARDIS?
Every story since about 1963.
I know in one of the Blu-ray box sets, I can't remember which one it is, but the TARDIS looks so scrappy because they've cleaned it up, and you can see every mark on the side, on the floor, and and you just think, oh, could you not have just tidied that up a bit? But because they've made it HD, every little thing shows up, which is, that's when you spot these things.
I've always said that if Doctor Who was actually all on film, at the time they had kept all the elements, they would have looked amazing. I mean, take something like The Professionals. If you watch that on was it ITV or whatever like that now, they're awful. The prints look like they've been dragged around the floor, and they just look really out of focus, scratched, horrible. The sounds, everything. Whereas the Blu-ray releases of the sets, it looks like some of them look like they were made yesterday. It's so crisp and colourful and sounds great. So it shows that if they have those original elements, they can make them look amazing.
I think the thing slightly with these, and I'm not just being a negative Nelly, but I know from having the VHSs to getting the DVDs, like Seeds of Death on VHS was a snowstorm. So then when you get the DVD, it was like, whoa, that is an incredible picture difference. And you're not always going to get that, and I understand that, I'm not stupid, but that was a moment where you go, actually, this is absolutely, the format has done, the remastering and the format have all come together, and that's a definite, your VHS is redundant, you don't need to look at it again. I don't know, don't throw stones at me, don't throw hands at me. I don't know whether if I had to watch Robots of Death, to take that then, on a special edition DVD or whatever, or the Blu-ray, whether I'd be sat there going, I think the picture quality is going to be shocking if I don't put the Blu-ray in. I mean, there are connoisseurs out there who will be like, your bit rate is 400 frames less or something, and then I'll be like, do you know what I mean? I think if I put the VHS of Robots of Death on, I would notice the difference between that and the DVD. Between the DVD and the Blu-ray, I don't know if I'm going to be sat there going, this is awful. Why am I watching it at such substandard quality?
Yeah, it works on some of them. I noticed with, like in season 26, like Ghostlight in particular, the DVD looked awful. But the Blu-ray, there was a definite step up for that. So some of them, yes, but as you say, you're not going to get it with all of them.
Do we have any last thoughts or extras on Doctor Who and the Collection season 22?
Yes. Colin Baker, I can't remember, I should have checked this for Trial of the Time God. This time, when you put the disc in, he goes, box set, disc 1. He doesn't say the collection, He just goes box set, like he's like, I can't be bothered saying all that season 22, all that sort of thing. Whereas previous ones, they did do that. I don't know, if he did that with 23, but like McCoy, did that and that sort of thing. So I just wondered if at this point they've just like, I can't be bothered. I'm just going to say box set.
They all sound like they've been cut together by robots, don't they?
Yeah.
They never sound very naturalistic.
They don't sound human.
They're like train announcements, when they go, and the 10:32. It's just like.
It's a spooky thing, and it still takes a week, doesn't it, to get to the menus? But the menus are sweet. They're nice.
Beautiful. I have to say, all of the TARDIS shot and all the little details, they're beautifully put together, and as soon as you put the first disc in, you're like, oh, I wonder what it's going to look like, and it just is gorgeous.
Yeah, they are gorgeous.
Absolutely. I think with this box set, the things that I actually genuinely was interested in and did take something from it is because this is the season where the show was in turmoil by this point, and was facing acts. I suppose it's good to, even though we talked about some of the interviews and some work better than others, I think it's good in a sort of whole to get a sense of where the show was at this point and how precarious it was, even though we know it carried on afterwards. But I think it's a significant point in Doctor Who history, so I think it's nice that there is some of that on here, and maybe, like you say, would have liked to hear from other people who were involved in the show. But some of the other articles, some of the other featurettes have got people talking about what was going on behind the scenes. So I think it's, from a Doctor Who history point of view, this is, one of those significant moments. And probably there's been several, but more recent one that we all know about because we watched it being played out.
That's the other thing we haven't mentioned is you get the little. I don't like calling them mini episodes. I think it's going a bit far to call them mini episodes, but the little trailer thing with Nicola and I can't remember his name. He's come and done a signing with us. Isn't that dreadful? From Doctor Who and the Kablam. Leo Flanagan. There we go.
Hey.
So that's on there. That's nice. It's actually slightly strange to have a box set out that's been out about a week, fortnight, something like that, and no trailer for that. Because is it the first time we've had a box set without the trailer for the next one?
I don't know.
Because I think it's always a bit like that meme that goes around where people are where the guy's looking over his shoulder at the other girl and he's got to go. It's always been that the box sets come out and everyone's like season 23 box set, but the next one's been announced, so it's a bit more like we know that one's coming out now. We've what was the next one? And this I think is the first time where we've not had the next one announced before the current one, because now that's it. I mean, so someone did ask on Twitter what next, and I was like, 18 months cancellation, 18 months hiatus in the charity song, because there isn't an announced set after season 22.
You mean we're going to have to
smash a television?
We're going to have to release Doctor Who Blu-ray in distress.
Oh no!
God.
Jason's vocal would be like Nicola's.
Probably would be.
I'd talk it. I'd go for an Ainley and just talk it.
Yeah,
when in doubt, just talk it.
I'll channel Nick Courtney.
Nick Courtney was never that camp. You'd be better off trying to Faith Brown, to be honest, love. Oh yeah, and I think this is the first time we've not had the next one lined up.
Well, fingers crossed for season 2 is my hope.
Mm-hmm.
You will. So they'll release it tomorrow. So by the time this goes out, we'll be like,
yeah, exactly.
Everyone will be like,
it was announced 2 weeks ago, you moron. But it wasn't when I was here. Okay, so everybody is look, get the product in. Is season 22 a hit, a miss, or a maybe, or a hitch and a ride like Sunita?
Go on then.
Well, if James goes first and says it's a hit, then Jason must have to say it's a hit and a bit.
I'll round it up to a hit and a half.
That's not rounding it up.
I know.
Do you know?
Doesn't know. He doesn't know. He thinks that a half is a rounded number. He doesn't know. He just does it to hate me.
I may be playing that to comic effect.
He may be, but he's not. just for the record.
I know I said at the beginning it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's not necessarily as sort of new, as laden with new material as previous ones. They've put the special effects in stories that great. It's nice that they've put special effects in them, but the stories aren't great. But I did genuinely love the Colin Baker interview. Some of the the makings of there was some bits on there where I was like, oh, I've not seen this before, or that was quite a nice little insight into it. And as I say, it's the what was happening in the show at that point that fascinates me, and there's a little bit more about that in here, and certain stories that have emerged from some of these interviews. So I'm going to say it's a hit, actually.
Okay.
I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the extras a lot more than some of the stories, but yeah.
Okay, I'll go next. And for me, I think there are some nice new extras on here that I really enjoyed, and I particularly enjoyed the documentary about the locations. I think Chris Chapman's done a fantastic job there on that one. The Colin interview, I think that was done very, very well indeed, and hats off to Matthew Sweet on that one. It was a great interview. And the new making of, I think, is a great addition for the two Doctors. There's lots of archive stuff. The episodes, as we've said, can't be cleaned up a huge amount more over where they are now. And I'm not a massive lover of the special effects being added on. So I don't really get too much out of them. So for me, I think it's a little bit light this time round. It feels like we've got an awful lot that's come off the original DVDs. And whilst they've obviously invested in the right places, to get some new interviews and a couple of new documentaries, I feel this one's not quite as good as some of its predecessors. So I'm going to be sitting in the maybe camp on this one.
Jason's camp. And how about special guest star Ben?
Special guest Ben, yes. I enjoyed it. I think they've made. This is the thing. I'm pretty much going to reiterate what Jason said, but not necessarily end it that way. So I think that that they have made an effort, definitely, to put as much as they can on here. I know a few people have said, "Oh, it's a bit light this time," but to be fair, a lot of the original stories were released when they were released on DVD. Apart from Two Doctors, they were released towards the end of the range, where they made a lot more effort putting a lot more extras on. So I don't think you can really do much more than put some extras on here. Chris Chapman definitely does a really good job with his documentaries, and I hope we get some more of these location ones on there, because I think they're really good and they really make use of the drones and everything like that, and they look really, really good to be able to go back to the original locations. The Matthew Sweet interviews, the Colin one's great, because you get to hear a lot of stuff on there that that Colin's never sort of spoken about and never talked about. So it's a good sort of new sort of way to hear from his various stories stuff, and the fact that he doesn't really talk about Doctor Who until about like ages into the interview. So rather than just the usual sort of thing, you get a lot of new stuff. I think actually it's the longest Matthew Sweet interview that he's done of all of them. So that just shows that he had a lot to talk about. The Grade interview, yes, it's a bit contentious, but in a way it's a curio, because it's the sort of thing that you wanted to, everyone's going to go and watch that just out of interest, even if disappointed with it. But and the Nickel interview is all right, whatever. But the rest of them, the Two Doctors documentary is really good. That's finally got a documentary at last, and they make an effort with that. We talked about the special effects, not so needed really on these ones. But but overall, I was very happy with it. So it's a thumbs up from me.
Because he's from down under, that means it's a thumbs down.
Wrong way up, mate.
Wrong way up. He's way up.
Jeez.
I always think it's nice because I suppose in some ways the season releases are a nice excuse to revisit a set of stories and group them together and all that sort of stuff. And it's nice to see them packaged together. It's nice to get the extras packaged together and all that sort of stuff. I don't know if it's an essential purchase. I mean, that's not me being unkind. I think a lot of people have done some nice things for this set. I'm not saying don't buy it. I just think if you had to wait and could get it reduced or get the next packet, I don't. It's all right. If you haven't got them at all, it's incredible, because it's a great way of getting them in bulk, I suppose, in one place. If you've already got the DVDs, I don't know if there's anything necessarily. I don't know whether I'm slightly repeating what I did with season 17. I think if you've got the DVDs here, I don't know if there's anything in the set that is screaming, you need this in your life. This is important stuff. So So I'm sort of like that with it. I'm like that. I think I'm with Jason. I don't. It take a lot for me to be saying it's a avoid at all costs. I just don't, in my heart of hearts, think there's enough here to say chuck your DVDs out. You need this because the picture sound isn't much of an issue here. There's not a lot of new sort of extra stuff that's going to change your world. Behind the Sofa's fine, but you're not going to watch that more than once. You're not going to keep coming back to that for entertainment because it's done when it's done, isn't it? So yeah, I would say if you've already got the originals, you might hold off. But if you haven't, swoop and you'll have a whale of a time. And that's no reflection on the stories at all. This is strictly speaking about the product and the marketing of the set. So if you bought it, right underneath, tell us what you liked about it. Tell us the bits you did like and didn't like. Put it down, but I'm sure you will have. I'm sure you're going to tell us. Tell us that Jason's wrong. We like that. Thank you very much, guys.
Pleasure as always.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Finally something.
I was going to do talk. I thought he was going to do that, but no. Yes. Thank you, special guest star Ben. He has to be credited as that, otherwise he gets stroppy. He has to have the billing and he has to have the right.
Yeah, I'm just looking on my phone now to see if my payments come through.
I'm off the clock now. I'm off the clock.
I'm off the clock. Come on, end this now. That's it.
Yeah. Special guest star Dave. Anyway, thank you very much. Like, subscribe, and we will see you again soon. So bye-bye.